Okay, so you ready for this?
Hit me.
In 2031, the International Space Station, like humanity's home away from home up in orbit,
Yeah.
it's going out in a blaze of glory.
Oh, wow.
We're talking like a fiery plunge into the Pacific Ocean.
That's like a Viking funeral, but for a space station.
Exactly. And this Scientific American article plans to trash the space station preview a bigger problem, dives into how it's all going to go down.
It is pretty fascinating.
Right.
Yeah, because it's not like some, uncontrolled disaster.
Right.
It's a meticulously planned deorbiting process, which is wild.
Deorbiting.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's not just letting it, fall out of the sky.
Right. No. Think of it more as like a carefully controlled descent,
Oh, okay.
kind of guided by a special SpaceX vehicle.
So it's like a space tow truck,
Uh-huh.
but instead of a hook, it uses, powerful thrusters.
Yeah, powerful thrusters to just nudge the ISS toward its final destination.
And that final destination is a watery grave in the Pacific. Okay, wow.
And, the ISS is so large that it won't burn up, completely in the atmosphere like smaller satellites do. Instead, pieces are going to, break off.
Oh, wow.
And they'll scatter across a targeted area in the Pacific.
Okay.
They're aiming for what they call the spacecraft graveyard,
Oh, interesting.
which is like a remote region where they just,
Sink them.
sink decommissioned spacecraft.
Makes sense.
Yeah, you don't want to have,
Pieces landing on someone's house.
exactly.
Oh, man. It's like that,
You remember that incident
yeah, in Florida.
back in 2024?
Yeah, debris from that Dragon spacecraft.
It re-entered the atmosphere and crashed right through someone's roof.
Oh, yeah, that was crazy. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Wow. That brings home the point that space junk isn't just some abstract problem,
Right. And while the ISS will be deorbited in this very, controlled way, not all space debris is so predictable. And those uncontrolled re-entries can pose a real threat.
Yeah, for sure. So, okay, back to the ISS. So this SpaceX-built vehicle that's guiding the deorbiting.
Yeah.
What's the deal with that?
So it's basically a souped-up version of SpaceX's Dragon spacecraft.
Okay.
And it's called the U.S. Deorbit Vehicle, or USDV for short.
Okay.
And it's got more powerful thrusters, bigger fuel tanks, basically everything it needs to handle this, massive maneuver.
So they took, a regular tow truck and gave it a monster truck upgrade.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And the whole process is a multi-step thing.
Okay.
First, there's a natural orbital decay,
Okay.
bringing the ISS closer to Earth.
Right.
Then the crew departs, leaving it basically a
Ghost ship.
ghost ship. And finally, at a very precise moment, the USDV's thrusters fire,
Okay.
which guides the station on its final descent.
This is where I get nervous, just thinking about that final push. That has to be incredibly precise to make sure those pieces land in the right spot.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
You have to avoid, shipping lanes,
Right.
populated areas.
Yeah,
It's a massive undertaking.
for sure.
Really showcases the level of scientific and engineering expertise,
Right.
required to manage these large objects in space, even as they reach the end of their life.
Yeah. I'm getting the feeling that this whole ISS deorbiting thing is kind of a big deal.
Well, it's a big deal. It's not just a spectacle.
Right.
It's a landmark event.
Right.
It's the first time we're bringing down something this big from space in a controlled way.
Wow.
And what we learned from this, really will inform how we deal with the larger issue of, all the junk we've left up there.
Yeah, speaking of junk, it's not just the ISS we need to worry about, right? This Scientific American article made it clear we're launching more and more satellites, which means...
More and more potential for debris in orbit.
Right, we're creating a giant junkyard above our heads.
It is a little concerning.
Okay, that's officially terrifying, but before we spiral into a black hole of despair, let's talk about what's being done to address this whole space junk situation.
Okay.
I'm guessing there are some smart people working on solutions.
There are.
Okay, good.
And the approaches are actually quite diverse.
So what are we talking about here? Are we sending little astronauts up there with tiny brooms?
Uh-huh. I wish it were that simple.
Right.
Actually, there are a few main approaches to tackling the space junk problem,
Okay.
each with its own, set of challenges.
Lay it on me. What's the first line of defense?
Well, We've already talked about controlled deorbiting with the ISS.
Right.
That's a key strategy, especially for, those larger objects.
Right, like guiding them down to that spacecraft graveyard in the Pacific. But that's not going to work for everything, is it?
You're right. Not every piece of space junk is a massive space station. So for smaller satellites, we're increasingly relying on something called end-of-life maneuvers.
End of life, so like a retirement plan for satellites.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Many satellites are now being designed with systems that allow them to be, safely disposed of at the end of their mission.
Okay.
They might use their remaining fuel to lower their orbit, bringing them closer to Earth, where they'll eventually burn up in the atmosphere.
So kind of like a controlled crash landing. Sounds a lot less dramatic than a fiery plunge into the ocean.
Definitely less dramatic.
Yeah.
But equally important. And the article mentions some other pretty cool solutions, too.
Oh, really?
Like they're talking about things like tethers,
Okay.
drag sails, and even giant nets.
Giant nets. Okay, now that's my kind of solution. Like a giant space vacuum cleaner just sucking up all that junk.
Yeah, you're getting the right idea. Some companies, like Airbus, are developing these technologies.
Wow.
Imagine, a space-based garbage truck equipped with a net that can just scoop up debris and then deorbit it safely.
That's straight out of a sci-fi movie, honestly.
It is pretty futuristic.
Yeah. But it also makes me realize that this is a pretty global problem. We're all sharing space, so to speak.
That's a key point. And this is where the idea of the tragedy of the commons comes in.
Oh, yeah.
It's a concept that applies when you have, a shared resource.
Okay.
Like space.
Right. Refresh my memory. What is the tragedy of the commons exactly?
Well, imagine if every country just, kept launching satellites, with no plan for what to do with them at the end of their lives.
Yeah, kind of like we've been doing.
Exactly.
Oops.
So you have all these satellites, no one's cleaning up after themselves, and eventually you have so much debris that collisions become,
Inevitable.
inevitable. Yeah.
And those collisions just create even more debris, right? It's like a chain reaction.
Precisely.
Oh, man.
And that's the tragedy. Everyone loses because space becomes too dangerous to use.
Yikes. So we need some rules of the road up there, right?
Yeah.
Like some international agreement.
Right.
To make sure everyone's playing by the same rules.
Well, there are some, existing guidelines.
Okay.
There's the Interagency Space Debris Coordination Committee.
Oh, boy.
Or IADC.
Right.
Which provides, recommendations for mitigating space debris.
Okay.
But as space gets more and more crowded,
Yeah.
those guidelines are going to need to be reevaluated and maybe even strengthened.
Because right now, it sounds like we're playing a very expensive and very dangerous game of bumper cars up there.
That's a good analogy.
Yeah.
And it's not just about protecting satellites from, each other.
Right.
We also have to think about the risks to, people here on Earth.
Right. We don't want space junk raining down on us. The article mentioned something about aviation authorities needing to be involved, too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, right now, when a piece of space junk is predicted to re-enter the atmosphere, they issue what are called NOTAMs.
Okay.
Or notices to air missions.
Okay.
Which are basically like warnings to pilots about potential hazards in the airspace.
So basically they're saying, hey, watch out. There might be some falling space junk in this area.
Pretty much.
Okay.
But as the amount of debris increases, we might need, a more dynamic and responsive system to manage those risks.
Got it. And all of this comes back to that idea of sustainability, right?
Exactly. Claire Martin, who's the Executive Vice President of Technology at Astroscale US, puts it well in the article.
Okay.
She says, we need to make sure we're not jeopardizing space for future generations.
Right. We don't want to turn space into some kind of wasteland that no one can use.
Right. We need to be, responsible stewards of space.
Right.
But there's another aspect to that sustainability question that we haven't even touched on yet.
Oh, okay.
And that's the potential environmental impact of all these deorbiting events.
Hold on. You mean it's not just about making sure the debris doesn't hit anything?
It's bigger than that.
So we've talked about, the debris itself.
Yeah.
But you're saying there's an environmental impact even when that debris burns up?
Yeah, that's right. It's something we haven't really, focused on enough.
Right.
When satellites deorbit and burn up in the atmosphere, they leave behind this metallic residue.
Oh, okay.
Tons of it, potentially.
Whoa! So it's like we're creating, a metallic smog high up in the atmosphere.
It's a good analogy. Jonathan McDowell, an astrophysicist at the Center for Astrophysics, Harvard and Smithsonian, points this out in the article.
Okay.
He's concerned about the long-term effects of just introducing all these foreign materials into a sensitive environment like the upper atmosphere.
So it's not just about, like, dodging falling space junk.
Right.
It's about what happens to all that vaporized metal after it burns up.
Exactly. We're just beginning to understand the potential consequences.
Hmm.
And it's something we need to consider seriously as we, continue to explore and utilize space.
Yeah, and it's like every time we solve one problem, another one pops up.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess that's how it goes with exploration, right? Always pushing boundaries and discovering new challenges.
Very true. And, it's important to remember that this isn't a reason to stop exploring.
Right.
It's just a reason to explore more responsibly
Yeah.
and sustainably.
Okay, so what's the takeaway here? Like, what can we do to make sure we're not messing things up for, future generations?
Well, first of all, staying informed is, it's crucial.
Right.
Organizations like the Secure World Foundation and the Space Safety Institute are doing some really great work raising awareness about space sustainability.
Yeah. The more we know, the better equipped we are to, like, make good decisions and stuff.
Right.
What else can we do?
Supporting companies that are, like, actively developing solutions for space debris removal. Encourage innovation in that field.
Right.
And don't underestimate the power of, like, advocacy.
Oh, okay.
Contact your elected officials.
Nice.
Make sure they know you care about space sustainability.
Because ultimately, this isn't just about protecting space.
Right.
It's about protecting our planet.
You got it. It's
Right.
about ensuring future generations can, continue to benefit from the wonders of space exploration.
Wow. Okay. I think we covered a lot of ground here today.
Yeah.
From, like, the ISS's final descent to the potential environmental impacts of space junk. It's been a wild ride.
It has.
Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Just this. As you watch the ISS make its fiery farewell in 2031, remember that it's not just like the end of an era.
Mm-hmm.
It's also a call to action.
Mm.
We have the knowledge and the tools to ensure, a sustainable future for space exploration. The question is, will we use them?
Well said. So, to our listeners out there, here's something to ponder. What role do you think you can play in ensuring responsible space exploration? It's a big question, but one worth asking ourselves.